They say fences make good neighbors, but where I lived, we didn't need fences. Just open yards dotted with a few trees, flower beds, and the occasional patio umbrella swaying in the breeze. It was peaceful. Or at least it used to be. I had bought my lot in Ridgeview Estates 4 years ago, right after retiring from the fire department. It was a modest half-acre parcel tucked at the end of a cul-de-sac, bordered on one side by woods, and on the other by an empty lot I was told was common green space. I didn't think much of it at the time. What mattered was that the property had a clean title, well-defined boundaries, and no encroachments. It was mine, fair and square. That empty parcel was a Lot 17, a privately owned lot that had sat vacant for years. I ended up purchasing it after its previous owner defaulted on property taxes. To the casual eye, Lot 17 looked like an extension of the neighboring lawn, especially since the family next door had been mowing it as part of their routine for over a decade. But I knew what I'd bought, and I had the deed survey and title insurance to prove it. For months, nothing happened. I lived quietly, planted a few apple trees, marked out my garden, read books on the back porch with a cup of coffee, bothering no one. But things changed the day I saw Karen Fletcher outside supervising workers in her backyard. Karen lived 2 doors down her property, sharing a border with Lot 17. She was president of our HOA. A woman who wore pastel polo shirts walked her tiny white dog named Tofu like clockwork and never met a rule she didn't love to enforce. She once fined my neighbor Ellen for leaving her recycling bin visible on a non-pickup day. Karen knew the book but often rewrote it on the fly. That Thursday morning, I saw a stack of stone pavers delivered by flatbed, a cement mixer parked in her driveway, and 2 laborers laying out string lines across what was clearly my land. I walked over, not angry, but confused. Morning, I called. Mind telling me what's going on? Karen turned all smiles and clipboards. Oh, we're extending our patio. HOA approved it. Isn't it exciting? Sure, I said slowly. Except those string lines are running into my property. She gave a tight laugh like she was explaining something to a child. Well, that's how this area has always been. It's community maintained. No one's ever used that corner. It's just grass. That's because it was a vacant lot. I bought it. It's mine. Karen's smile didn't waver, but her eyes sharpened. I see. But according to our HOA documents, that land's part of the shared aesthetic zone. It's always been treated as part of the adjacent yard. I've been maintaining it. With respect, I said, keeping calm. It doesn't matter who's been mowing it. The tax assessor and county plat map say it's mine. She tapped her clipboard. I'm afraid HOA precedent carries weight here. And just like that, I knew we had a problem. I went back inside and dug through my files. The original title deed, my purchase contract, the certified survey I'd commissioned after closing all crystal clear. Lot 17 was 0.28 acres. Its southern boundary was exactly 68 feet, meaning the edge of Karen's new patio was 6 feet into my land. I didn't want to escalate. Not yet. So the next morning, I returned with a copy of my survey, highlighted and annotated, and politely asked Karen to adjust her construction plan. She refused. It's already been approved by the architectural committee, she said. They signed off 2 weeks ago. Any objection needed to be filed within 10 days of notification. What notification? I asked. She waved vaguely. It was posted on the community board and emailed, I believe. I checked my inbox that afternoon. No email. And the community board, a faded corkboard behind plexiglass at the subdivision entrance, untouched since last Halloween. I tried reasoning again. Karen, I'm not trying to make trouble. But this isn't about aesthetics or notices. This is about land ownership. Legal boundaries. You're building on my lot. She smiled tighter, and I'm sure the HOA legal team will clarify everything if it comes to that. That night, I sat at my desk staring at the glowing survey map under my lamp. I didn't want a war, but I hadn't worked 30 years, paid for a clean title, and then let someone gaslight me off my own property with a clipboard and a pastel sweater. I made a decision. I emailed a professional surveyor the next morning and paid for a remarking. 3 days later, red flags appeared in the soil, each marking the corners of Lot 17, clearly showing Karen's project had crossed the line. When I went to take pictures for my records, Karen stood on her partially poured patio, arms crossed. Still fighting it, she asked. I'm documenting facts, I replied, and giving you another chance to move your project back to your property line. She scoffed. HOA compliance trumps individual complaints. That land has always been part of our outdoor use space. I stared at her. Not anymore. The next day, a letter arrived. Not from Karen, but from the HOA board. A courtesy notice of violation addressed to me, accusing me of interfering with an approved construction project and trespassing in an active build zone. It warned that continued disruption of HOA-sanctioned improvements could lead to fines or a formal hearing. I laughed out loud. Then I pulled out my phone, took photos of everything, and called the county zoning department. If they wanted a battle over inches, I'd show them how deep roots go. By the time the county returned my call, Karen's workers were framing out the expanded patio section, poured concrete curing under the afternoon sun, stone veneer stacked against her house like it had always been there. The county planner, Daryl Fitch, had a calm voice and a Midwest accent, the kind of guy who'd seen enough neighbor disputes to know a real one was brewing. I explained everything: my deed, the purchase of Lot 17, the red survey flags, the HOA's claim that visual precedent overrode property lines. Sounds like a classic encroachment, he said. Send me the documentation. I'll get someone out there next week. Next week, I asked, trying not to sound frustrated. We're short-staffed, he admitted. But if it's active construction, we'll mark it urgent. Just send what you've got. So I did. Scanned every page, highlighted lot lines, attached time-stamped photos, even annotated a drone image from the previous summer showing the original grass line versus the new concrete boundary. It clearly showed Karen's patio extended 6 feet into my lot, and 14 feet at the corner where it curved outward like an invading fortress wall. While I waited for the county, Karen doubled down. She hosted a barbecue that weekend, grilled bratwursts, sangria pitchers, red Solo cups, and folding chairs set directly over the disputed space. People mingled like nothing was wrong. Kids played cornhole where my future garden was supposed to be. I watched from my porch, seething. At one point, Karen caught my eye. She lifted a glass, toasted with a grin, and called across the lawn, "Hope you're enjoying your slice of HOA heaven." The next morning, her workers installed outdoor lighting posts wired through a trench that ran diagonally across Lot 17. Not only was she trespassing, she was digging into my land. I took more photos. Then I called my lawyer. His name was Mark Allerton, a semi-retired real estate litigator who took cases that interested him. My story definitely got his attention. "Wait," he said after I explained. "She claimed what?" "That the HOA's verbal approval overrules my deed." Mark chuckled. "That's not how land use works." "I know, but she doesn't. And she's making it everyone's problem." He asked for all my documentation, deed surveys, HOA communications, photographs, even the violation letter sent to me. Then he said, "I'll reach out to their legal counsel. I've dealt with Ridgeview HOA before. If this isn't resolved, we'll file an injunction." That word, injunction, felt heavy, serious, and oddly satisfying. It also felt like war. A few days later, a notice was taped to my door from the Ridgeview HOA Compliance Office, signed by Karen herself using President in large looping font. As of today, any unauthorized survey markers, flags, signage, or structures placed in common areas or HOA-adjacent spaces must be removed within 48 hours. Failure to comply may result in daily fines of up to $150 per Ridgeview Civic Code. I read it 3 times. Then I marched to Lot 17 and added more flags. On Thursday, the county arrived. 2 officials stepped out of a beige SUV marked Planning and Development, 1 man, 1 woman. Clipboards in hand, safety vests, tired eyes. "I'm John Weller," I said. "Thanks for coming." They introduced themselves as Donna and Ricky, asked to see my documents, and began walking the boundary with a measuring tape. Karen came out midway through holding tofu like a newborn. "Excuse me," she said. "Who authorized this inspection?" "We're with the county," Donna replied politely. "Zoning and encroachment complaint review." Karen scoffed. "I'm the HOA president. We have protocols. I should have been notified." "You are now," Ricky said flatly, continuing his measurements. Karen huffed and retreated inside. After an hour, Donna returned with her notebook. "Your lot line's correct. We matched it to the official plats, and your survey aligns. Her patio and lighting trench are a clear encroachment, more than 5 feet beyond the line. So what now? We'll issue a stop work order immediately. If construction continues, she could face a zoning violation ticket and enforcement action." I thanked them, relieved, but I knew Karen wouldn't take it well, and I was right. The next morning, she ignored the posted notice. A yellow laminated stop work order was taped to her back fence, signed dated with penalties outlined. When I stepped outside with my coffee, I saw her contractor back on site, smoothing mortar and preparing pavers. Karen was there too in a sun hat, and shades giving instructions like she was Martha Stewart of suburban warfare. I walked to the fence. "That's a violation," I said calmly. "You're going to get fined." She looked at me like I was the trespasser. "You're making a mountain out of a molehill," she snapped. "This land's been used by the community for years. If anything, you're disrupting neighborhood harmony. I'm enforcing property lines. You're obsessed with boundaries." "No, I said I'm defending what I legally own." Karen turned away, muttering something I didn't catch, except for the word bully. That weekend, I received a surprise. Mark forwarded a cease and desist letter he'd sent to Karen and the HOA board stating Lot 17 was private property, no construction was authorized, and further action would result in civil liability. He'd also sent a copy to the county requesting enforcement if the stop work order was violated again. Karen responded 2 days later. She filed a formal grievance with the HOA board, accusing me of targeted harassment, intentional interference with community development, and abuse of legal channels to intimidate female leadership. She was trying to flip the narrative, but it was too late, because on Monday morning, Daryl from the zoning office called. "They didn't stop," he said, half amused, half annoyed. "So we're escalating. Enforcement crew will be out Wednesday." "Enforcement crew?" "Yep," he said. "Equipment and all. Be ready." I hung up stunned. I hadn't expected it to go this far, but part of me was ready. Tuesday night was quiet. Karen didn't seem to know what was coming. She watered her potted flowers on the patio's edge, humming. Her string lights glowed. A citronella candle flickered on a folding table. To the untrained eye, it looked like a peaceful summer setup. But the truth was buried 6 inches beneath where concrete footers, wires, and flagstones sat squarely on land they never should have touched. By morning, it would all be gone. And Karen, she had no idea the county wasn't coming to talk. They were coming to bulldoze. The sun was cresting over the Pine Ridge when I woke on Wednesday, the morning the county arrived. I didn't need an alarm. Tension had coiled in my chest for weeks like armor under my skin. But that morning there was something else. Anticipation. I brewed coffee, stepped onto my porch, and looked toward Karen's house. Her new patio gleamed. Stonework complete lights, wired flower pots, aligned like soldiers, a chimenea tucked in the corner like she planned a dinner party. She thought she'd won. Like her construction had claimed the land by confidence and denial. But I knew better. The land doesn't lie, neither do boundary lines. I remember the day I first had my lot surveyed after buying it. Not just a basic assessment, a full professional survey by a local firm specializing in homeowner-developer disputes. It cost more than I liked, but something about how Lot 17 had been treated as everyone's lawn made me nervous even then. The lead surveyor, Glennis, explained it plainly. "You'd be surprised how many fights start with one patio stone too far," he'd said. "Don't trust handshakes or mowed grass. Trust rebar pins and county maps." And so I did. When Glenn marked the corners with orange flags and metal stakes, he showed me the coordinates from the county plat records. Lot 17 stretched beyond the tree line farther than most neighbors realized. Crucially, it included what had been assumed as open green. That's why it was galling to watch Karen claim it like it was hers, like she was doing me a favor by making unused land pretty. Now, with every inch of concrete she poured, she was building a lawsuit. At 9:47 a.m., the first county truck arrived. An orange-striped flatbed loaded with barricades cones, and 2 no-nonsense enforcement officers in safety vests. They parked beyond the cul-de-sac and started unloading like they'd done this before. 10 minutes later came the second truck, a yellow case bulldozer. Big, loud, unapologetic. It rolled into view with a low growl trailing dust and authority. Neighbors emerged like prairie dogs, craning necks, clutching coffee mugs, some holding phones. Ridgeview had never seen anything like this. The biggest excitement was usually a bake sale dispute or someone painting their shutters the wrong beige. Today was a spectacle. Karen burst out of her sliding doors in a powder blue tracksuit phone to her ear. "What is this?" she shouted, waving one hand toward the bulldozer, the other gripping tofu like a football. Donna and Ricky stepped forward. "Ma'am, this is enforcement of Order Number 5129B. Donna said calmly, holding up a clipboard. "You were issued a stop work notice. That order was ignored." Karen's face flushed crimson. You can't destroy my property. This is private land. The section you constructed is over a recorded lot line property you do not own, Ricky said. You were notified. You continued work. You're liable for removal under County Code 14.71. But I'm the HOA president, she yelled. That doesn't grant you eminent domain, ma'am, Donna replied. Step back, please. She tried to argue, voice rising, but neighbors were watching cameras out. Karen realized she was on stage, and not the kind she liked. She pivoted to the crowd. Everyone, please, this is madness. This is what happens when one person weaponizes bureaucracy. She pointed at me across the lawn, has been sabotaging community unity for months. I said nothing. I stood arms crossed as the bulldozer's engine revved. They started with the lighting trench. A crew of 3 pulled out the wiring while another team lifted the stone, edging with crowbars. Paver by paver, the patio was dismantled. County regulations were clear. Any structure built across a recorded boundary without easement or permit had to be removed. In full. So, Karen screamed when the first concrete slab was lifted. You're ruining my home, she cried. You're destroying my lifestyle. A neighbor muttered, you mean someone else's land. Karen ran inside and returned with her clipboard, no doubt the HOA-approved plans. She waved them frantically, shoving them toward Donna. These were signed off. Donna barely glanced at them. HOA approvals do not override county property records. This is a boundary violation. Another neighbor whispered she really thought she could bluff through it. I didn't answer. I watched the final section of patio, her curved sitting area, with flower beds and a built-in bench crack under the backhoe shattering like brittle stone. The noise was jarring. Final. Irrevocable. By 2:00 p.m., the last debris was loaded into a dump truck. All that remained was torn-up earth tire tracks and survey flags flapping in the breeze. The backyard no longer looked like a social hub. It looked like a battlefield. Karen stood on her deck, dazed. Tofu barked twice, then quieted, sensing the shift. She hadn't cried, but tears smeared her makeup, her expression hollow, like someone who'd built a castle on sand and just realized the tide was real. Before the crew left, Donna handed me the enforcement report. You'll want this for your records, she said. It confirms the boundary, the violation, and the corrective action. Thank you, I said quietly. Then she added, we don't often see residents this prepared. You did everything right. It was small vindication, but it meant more than I expected. I stood alone after everyone left. I walked to the bare edge of Lot 17, where her patio had been. I knelt, pushed my fingers into the fresh dirt, and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. This was mine. Not because I screamed louder, had a fancier title, or got HOA blessings, but because I'd respected the law, held my ground, and followed the process. Karen had built over the line, but I had measured it, and that made all the difference. The first time I confronted Karen wasn't dramatic. It was almost casual, polite on the surface. But beneath it, a current was moving, one that would drag us into deeper water than either of us expected. It was the Saturday after the county confirmed the encroachment. The survey flags fluttered, the stop work order was taped to the fence, but Karen was undeterred. She stood in her backyard with her clipboard, chatting with a contractor while pointing at stonework that clearly crossed the boundary. I decided to approach one last attempt to de-escalate before this became permanent. I crossed the grass, slowly holding a manila folder with my survey deed and the county's notice. Morning, I said. Karen turned her sun hat, casting a shadow across her sharp expression. Oh, she said, voice clipped. Hello, Mr. Property Line. I ignored the jab. I brought something for you, I said, extending the folder. It might help to see it all together. The county has ruled. You're 6 feet over the line, and they've made it clear what comes next. Karen didn't glance at the folder. She gripped her clipboard like a shield. I'm sorry, she said coolly, but I don't accept your narrative. It's not a narrative, I said, struggling to stay level. It's county records. Lot 17 is my property. I own it. You've built across it without permission, and the county is forcing removal. I'm not driving the bulldozer, Karen. I'm just the guy who filed the paperwork. Her eyes narrowed. You're not from here, are you? I blinked. Excuse me. You weren't here when we formed the HOA, when we voted on shared space allowances. That corner has always been part of the green. I've hosted events on it since 2012. And yet, I said carefully, you never bought it. You never paid taxes on it. And you never had a legal right to build on it. That's what matters now. Karen sighed dramatically. You know what I think this is really about? She asked, tilting her head. You want to make a name for yourself. You're trying to play land baron, trying to make a statement. My jaw clenched. I'm protecting what's mine. No, she said, stepping forward. You're trying to embarrass me. You think I don't know how this looks. The bulldozer, those flags, the videos people are posting. You're making a circus out of a minor disagreement. A minor disagreement, I asked, incredulous. You've poured concrete into my property. You cut a trench across my soil. And when I asked you to stop politely, you reported me for harassment. I was protecting my workers. You were ignoring the law. Her lips parted, showing her teeth. For a second, I thought she'd yell. But she smiled. Thin, confident cutting. You know what? The board has my back, and so do the bylaws. I held up the folder. Then you should read this. She didn't take it. Instead, she said, you're going to regret this. And then she turned heels, clicking on the edge of my land, and walked away. I didn't sleep much that night. Even with the county's decision, even with the bulldozer scheduled to remove the last stone footers, I had a gnawing feeling. How far is she willing to take this? Karen's. You're going to regret this wasn't just a threat. It was a promise, and I didn't think she was bluffing. So I did what I'd learned in the fire service I prepared. I walked the lot with a flashlight and camera, snapped photos of every corner marker and fence post, checked my security cams, locked my shed tools, and backed up the footage from the demolition day. I didn't want to fight, but I wasn't about to let someone bulldoze my rights just because they wore a pastel HOA polo and talked louder than the facts. Sunday morning brought a knock on my door. It was Mike Elston, my neighbor 2 lots down. Kind guy, retired military, kept to himself. He held his phone like it was a live grenade. You seen this? He asked. I shook my head. He handed it to me. A post on Ridgeview's private HOA Facebook group from Karen. We've got a neighbor who's decided he owns more than he does. I've always tried to build community, but some people only know how to build walls. Thanks to those who know what this space means. The photo showed her patio before the demolition, string lights, lawn chairs, 2 kids playing cornhole. The comments were a dumpster fire. Such a shame, can't believe someone would do this to their neighbors. Tell us who, we'll talk to him. Some people don't belong here. I handed the phone back. You okay, Mike asked. I'm fine, I said, but I wasn't. I'd been turned into the villain, and Karen was scripting it faster than I could respond. That night, I drafted my own message. I didn't name names. Just posted a photo of the survey map zoomed in on Lot 17 with a short caption. The land we own is the land we're responsible for. Whether that means protecting it from neglect or from those who believe property lines are optional, I believe in building community, but not on stolen ground. I didn't expect much, but within an hour, reactions trickled in. A few likes, then a comment from Ellen, whom Karen had fined for her recycling bin. About time someone stood up to her. Then Jake, who'd lived here since the HOA's founding. I was on the original landscaping committee. That corner was always privately owned. She just pretended it wasn't. And Naomi, who'd just moved in. I thought you were being difficult, but I saw the footage. You were right. By morning, my inbox had 5 new messages. Support, screenshots, even drone footage from last month showing the patio construction deep into my lot. Karen wrote the first chapter, but I was writing the rest. If there was ever a moment I thought the HOA might do the right thing, it was the Monday after the bulldozer left. For a few hours, I hoped the board would see the wreckage, the documentation, the facts, and realize they'd backed the wrong horse. I was wrong. Instead, I received a letter. Hand-delivered, slipped into my mailbox, without postage, classic HOA move. Heavy cardstock, Ridgeview Estates letterhead, and a stern tone that read like a veiled threat. Dear Mr. Weller, the board of Ridgeview Estates has reviewed the dispute regarding your complaints against HOA President Karen Fletcher and her home improvement project. While we acknowledge property lines are a matter of county record, we are obligated to uphold the architectural and community harmony provisions of the Ridgeview Covenants. The patio was approved under Section 1B of the Design Guidelines, meeting all HOA aesthetic and placement standards at the time of submission. We regret the escalation and believe it could have been resolved amicably through better communication and neighborly cooperation. Due to multiple reports of your unneighborly behavior, including construction equipment and surveillance drones, a hearing will be held on Thursday at 6:30 p.m. to determine potential violations on your part. Sincerely, Ridgeview HOA Board. I reread it 3 times. They were calling a hearing on me, not Karen, even after the county bulldozed her patio, even after she violated the stop work order, even after I'd been proven right. I sat holding the letter, stunned. It wasn't just the absurdity. It was the clarity. The board wasn't interested in justice. They were protecting themselves. And Karen was their shield. On Tuesday, I ran into Ellen, the neighbor Karen fined for an overgrown flower box. She was walking her dog and waved me down. I heard about the hearing, she said quietly. That's ridiculous. Not surprised, I replied. You should know, she said, glancing around, Karen's been meeting with the board behind closed doors. Saturday night. In her sunroom. My stomach tightened. Seriously. She brought wine, Ellen said flatly. And cupcakes. I almost laughed. Of course she did. That's not how governance works. Ellen raised an eyebrow. You think rules ever applied to her? I spent 2 days preparing. I organized every document, surveys, photos, timestamps, county correspondence, the enforcement notice, the debris cleanup order. I created a timeline on a foam board with pins and strings like a courtroom drama. I printed Karen's HOA Facebook post and marked the inaccuracies. Mark warned me over the phone they'll steer the narrative toward tone and community spirit. Stick to the facts. Don't let emotion bleed through. You've got the truth. That's enough. I believed him. But when Thursday night arrived, my hands were sweating. The meeting was in the Ridgeview Clubhouse, a beige stucco box with folding chairs and bad lighting. A folding table held the 5 board members, Carol, Treasurer Dwayne, Vice President Lily, Secretary Joel, Architectural Review, and Karen, who was both president and the person I was complaining about. She didn't recuse herself. Of course not. The room was half full. Mostly older residents, a few younger couples, and curious neighbors wanting a show. I walked up, poster board in one hand, folder in the other. Dwayne cleared his throat. Mr. Weller, you have 5 minutes to present your position. Only 5, I asked, startled. That's the rule, Karen said, smiling sweetly. We want to keep things equitable. I bit back a reply. Mark's voice echoed, stick to the facts. So I did. I walked them through it all. And the deed to lot, the original survey, the photographic evidence, the county stop work order, the enforcement action, the demolition, and the HOA's own bylaw. Section 4.3.1 stating HOA approvals do not override private property rights or county zoning regulations. I ended quietly. I didn't ask for a fight. I asked for my land to be respected and for your support in enforcing what was rightfully mine. Instead, I received a violation notice. A pause. Then Karen spoke. Well, she said, standing, we appreciate the clarity. But community cohesion matters too. This situation has been divisive. I believe there was room for dialogue that Mr. Weller ignored. She turned to the board. I recommend a formal warning letter, not because of property lines, but because of the antagonistic behavior. The surveillance, the social media escalation, the hostility disrupting our peace. Lily nodded quickly. I've gotten emails. People feel anxious. Carol added the drone footage upset residents. Joel, the only one who looked uncomfortable, glanced at me and said, but legally, his position was accurate. Karen sighed dramatically. Perhaps, but legality isn't the only metric. I stood frozen. This was a lie dressed in civility. They were spinning it, twisting the truth until I looked like the aggressor. But then something happened. A voice from the back spoke. Actually, said Mike Elston, standing slowly, I thought this was petty. But I saw the demolition, the markers. I checked the plat map online. Weller's right. Weller's. He looked at the board. And if the HOA can punish someone for protecting their property, what's the point of a deed? Naomi raised her hand. I moved here for safety. Quiet. Stability. But what I saw was power punishing someone who followed the law. That scares me more than any drone. 3 more residents spoke. Not everyone, but enough. The board didn't smile anymore. Karen tried to redirect, but the energy had shifted. They didn't vote that night. Carol said they would take the matter under advisement. The meeting ended in whispers and shuffling feet. I walked into the cool night, heart pounding, but shoulders lighter. Karen had the title, the clipboard, the influence. But I had the truth. And it was starting to speak louder than her. The morning after the hearing, I got up early, not because I had to, but because sleep felt distant. Despite the small victories, the weight of battling Karen and the board pressed on me. Though I had law and facts, they were making every step harder. I brewed coffee, pulled out my file binder, now thicker than a small town novel, and made a list. If they don't stop. At the top, escalate to county council. The idea came from Mark. After the hearing, he'd called impressed, but not optimistic. They can't override your deed, he said. But they can make your life miserable. If you want this to stop, go above them. He explained that while zoning violations were handled by planning and development, habitual HOA overreach, especially defying enforcement, could be reported to the County Land Use Commission. They don't like hearing about homeowners bullied for upholding the law, he said, especially after last year's media coverage on rogue HOAs. They're paying attention. I filed the paperwork the next morning, not just a complaint, a formal petition requesting an investigation into Ridgeview Estates HOA for misuse of authority, failure to acknowledge legal boundaries, and targeted retaliation against a property owner for complying with county zoning decisions. Mark helped attach every shred of evidence on the deed, the certified survey, photos of the encroachment, the stop work order, footage of the demolition, screenshots of Karen's social media posts, the HOA hearing notice accusing me of unneighborly conduct. He added a note to the commission highlighting Karen's role as HOA president and her failure to recuse herself from disciplinary proceedings involving her actions. Flagrant conflict of interest, Mark wrote, undermines homeowner trust and erodes lawful governance. A week passed. Then 2. I kept to myself, mowed the grass, planted late summer tomatoes in raised beds along Lot 17, the patch beneath Karen's illegal patio. I'd see her occasionally. She avoided eye contact. No cheerful waves or passive-aggressive remarks, just silence, maybe shame, or simmering rage. One afternoon, I found a pile of landscaping debris twigs, mulch broken pavers, dumped on my driveway. No note, no explanation, but I didn't need one. I took a photo and added it to the file. On the 3rd Thursday after filing, I got a call. Mr. Weller, the voice said. Yes. Denise Robards County Land Use Commission. We've opened a formal case. It's been assigned a number and we'll dispatch a compliance officer to Ridgeview next week. I exhaled almost shaky. I appreciate that. Really. She continued. We don't intervene in HOA matters unless there's clear evidence of legal boundary disputes or retaliatory governance. But your documentation is thorough, and frankly, the tone of the HOA letter was concerning. That word, concerning, sounded gentle, but bureaucratically it was damning. The next week, a white SUV marked County Commission, Land Use, and Mediation parked in front of Karen's house. A woman in a gray blazer stepped out clipboard in hand with 2 assistants, one holding a video camera. They knocked on Karen's door. No answer. They tried again. Nothing. Then they walked across the grass onto my lot. I came out to greet them. Mr. Weller, the lead officer asked. Yes. I'm Officer Byrne. We're here regarding your petition and enforcement follow-up. Would you walk us through the events? I led them from the sidewalk, through the garden, to the red survey flags. I showed the patched trench from Karen's lighting line, the faded tire marks from the bulldozer. By the time we returned to my porch, Byrne had a full page of notes and a somber expression. She wasn't just over the line, she said. She was deep into it. Exactly. She sighed. I can't speak to how the board will respond, but I can tell you. We'll issue a directive to Ridgeview's HOA demanding acknowledgement of this boundary. If they ignore it, they risk losing their self-governance authority under the county charter. I blinked. That's possible? HOAs are granted authority under county approval, Byrne explained. When they abuse it, especially retaliating against homeowners exercising legal rights, they can be dissolved or placed under oversight. Suddenly, I felt hope. 2 days later, every mailbox in Ridgeview received a county letter. Notice of county findings. Ridgeview Estates HOA has been found in violation of land use regulations in case number C5127 regarding unpermitted construction over a private parcel not owned by the builder or HOA. The board's disciplinary hearing regarding the complainant homeowner had significant procedural irregularities, including conflict of interest and retaliatory posture. The HOA is instructed to acknowledge Lot 17's boundaries, rescind all disciplinary warnings against Mr. Weller, and submit to a 6-month governance audit. Failure to comply will result in further action, including suspension of self-regulatory privileges. It hit the neighborhood like a thunderclap. The group chat exploded. Screenshots spread. And Karen, she vanished. No morning walks with tofu. No sun hat sightings. No HOA newsletters. Nothing. It was as if the queen of Ridgeview had gone underground. Later that week, Joel stopped by. The only board member who'd looked me in the eye. He stood on my porch with a folded letter. I thought you should see this, he said. It was the board's formal retraction unanimously approved even by Karen, though she didn't attend the vote. I scanned the words. The Board of Ridgeview Estates acknowledges Mr. Weller acted within his legal rights and that the disciplinary hearing was inappropriate and improperly conducted. It ended with an apology. Typed, signed, sealed. That night, I walked Lot 17 in the dark, flashlight in hand. Not to check for violations, not out of fear, but as ritual. I paused at each flag, touching the cool metal, breathing the silence. For the first time since this began, the air didn't feel heavy. It felt mine. Every inch, every foot, every stubborn, hard-won boundary. The strange thing about justice is it doesn't come with a parade. No confetti, no swelling music. It arrives quiet, cold. In manila envelopes, email attachments, and county letterhead stapled to stakes. For Karen, it came as a red sticker on her patio gate. Stop work order, section 14.71. County code violation. Do not remove this notice. Further construction is a punishable offense. I saw it the morning after the county issued their findings. A compliance officer had posted it where everyone could see. Neighbors slowed to read, whispered. Some took pictures. Karen stayed inside. Curtains drawn. Silence. But I wasn't assuming it was over. I'd learned something. When you take power from someone used to having it unchecked, they rarely surrender quietly. That Friday, Ricky called. Heads up, he said. Someone claimed you vandalized HOA property. I blinked. What? The red sticker. The stop work notice. I almost laughed. That's from your department. I know. That's why I'm calling. We verified everything. But someone's creating noise. Karen. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Anyway, he continued, we're dispatching an officer to check compliance. If work resumes, we'll take action. That phrase, take action, had weight now. After the demolition, it meant fines, legal escalation. Maybe Karen was finally boxed in. Except she wasn't. On Sunday morning, I stepped outside to find two men unloading cement bags from an unmarked pickup at Karen's house. They moved quickly. No uniforms, no logo, just tools and tarps. I crossed the lawn. Morning, I said loudly. One glanced up startled. The other kept working. Who are you with? I asked. He paused. Just a quick fix. Nothing structural. My eyes flicked to the cement mixer. Looks structural to me. I took out my phone. The one with every county department's number. Yeah, this is John Weller. Unpermitted construction's happening again at Ridgeview. Same address. I've got video. Send someone now. By the time I hung up, the truck was gone. So were the workers. But the damage was done again. A fresh trench crossed the boundary. New rebar was set. Quikrete bags lay stacked, half-torn. Karen had waited for the dust to settle, then tried to rebuild, like a child sneaking cookies after being grounded. But I was ready. The county arrived within the hour. Not Ricky, not Donna. Two new officers, with a man in a county windbreaker badge around his neck. Inspector Mendez, Enforcement Division, not just planning and zoning. They didn't knock. They walked to the flagged zone, measured the rebar, photographed the cement, and reviewed my footage. This is a clear violation, Mendez said. Work resumed after a stop order. What happens now? He looked grim. We'll issue a summons to appear in county court. This moves beyond zoning. It's criminal trespass and defiance of lawful orders. A week ago, that might have shocked me. Now it felt inevitable. That evening, I received an email. Case update, violation, 7123A. A PDF attachment. Notice of non-compliance, escalation. With Karen's name on the respondent line. And the homeowner has violated section 14.7.1 by resuming construction after lawful stop work order. The homeowner may be subject to fines up to $7,500 and mandatory removal of all new materials. A court appearance is scheduled for August 14th. It didn't say alleged. It didn't say pending clarification. It said violation. So, for the first time, I leaned back, closed my eyes, and felt victory. Not out of spite, not ego, but because the system finally worked as it should. That night, Joel stopped by. He stood on my porch with a folded document. I thought you should see this, he said. An internal HOA memo circulated that day. Effective immediately, Karen Fletcher is stepping down as Ridgeview HOA president, citing health concerns and the need for privacy during pending legal matters. I looked at him. Health concerns. That's the official line. And the real reason. Joel hesitated. The board got nervous. County pressure, member emails. The vote was unanimous. I folded the paper slowly. She won't go quietly, I said. No, he agreed. But she goes. 3 days later, a new HOA newsletter arrived. Short, simple, no pastel fonts or quotes. We appreciate your patience as Ridgeview transitions to new leadership. We reaffirm our commitment to respecting private property, legal compliance, and neighborly fairness. No mention of me, no apology, but also no spin, no false harmony. A reset. I walked Lot 17 that evening as the sun set. The boundary markers fluttered like tiny banners of defiance. My garden was sprouting. The soil was turning. The air felt still. I reached the spot where Karen's patio had jutted out and placed a small solar light at the mulch line. It wasn't much, a warm, steady glow, but it was mine. It marked a line no one would cross again. The morning the county brought the bulldozers was strangely quiet. Not emotionally, I was a storm of anticipation, dread and relief, but literally. No lawnmowers, no barking dogs, no HOA volunteers with clipboards. Ridgeview held its breath, waiting for something to explode or dissolve. I'd received the notice the day before. Final enforcement action, demolition scheduled. It listed the exact date and time, 9:00 a.m., Tuesday. The letter was stern, citing legal codes and stating property owners or affected parties should not interfere with the removal or approach the crew. It meant business. I woke early, drank coffee by the window, and waited. At 8:57 a.m., a yellow bulldozer rumbled around the cul-de-sac, followed by 2 county work trucks, a sheriff's SUV, and a black Suburban with tinted windows and government plates. They parked with precision. Doors opened, boots hit pavement. The team emerged, utility vests, hard hats, clipboards, except for the man from the Suburban. He wore a blazer, a county seal on his lapel, and a walkie-talkie. He wasn't here to dig. He was here to oversee. Karen came out seconds later like she'd been waiting behind her sliding door. She wore a black turtleneck, dark sunglasses, and a scarf like a grieving widow from a soap opera. She stood on her patio, the one she'd rebuilt after the first stop work order, and shouted, "I demand to speak with someone in charge." The man in the blazer raised a hand, calm. "Ma'am, I'm Supervisor Grant. I'm here on behalf of the County Enforcement Division. This demolition is lawfully ordered and will proceed. You can't destroy my property. You were served notice 2 weeks ago. The structure resides outside your lot boundary. You had the opportunity to remove it yourself." Karen glanced around, realizing how many were watching. Neighbors stood in driveways. Some filmed. Others stood with arms crossed. I saw Mike, Ellen, Joel. Karen's voice cracked. "You're humiliating me." "We are enforcing the law," Grant said. She opened her mouth, but no words came. The bulldozer started its engine. The noise was deafening. The operator raised the blade, aligning it with the stone footers of the illegal extension. The half-finished cement base she'd snuck in after the first demolition cracked under the treads. The first strike shattered the base like brittle bones. Concrete split. Rebar snapped. A garden lantern fell and crumpled. Karen screamed, a sound more shock than fury. She ran to her deck's edge, hands outstretched, as if she could stop steel with willpower. "This is abuse of power," she yelled. "This is targeted harassment. I am the president of this community." "No," Grant said evenly. "You were." He turned away. The crew worked with brutal efficiency. They ripped up every stone, every trench, every conduit hidden under mulch. One worker held up a faded HOA marker flag near the boundary and shook his head before tossing it into a debris bin. It took 3 hours. When done, the patio was dirt and dust. The leveled soil held tire marks and exposed roots like a battlefield, hiding no scars. A hollow space remained where entitlement had been set in stone. Karen disappeared inside after the second hour. When the trucks rolled out, the street felt like a storm's aftermath. Quiet, awed, cleansed. Later, I received another county letter. Final notice of enforcement completion. The structure at Karen's address has been removed as of time/date per violation number 7123A. Future building activity on this or adjacent parcels requires new permitting and approval. No further contact from the complainant, Mr. Weller, is necessary. No signature, just closure. That evening, I walked Lot 17 with Samson, my golden retriever. The sun cast shadows across the cleared ground where dirt and crushed stone hinted at what had been. At the lot's far end, I found a single stone tile, smooth, polished, part of the patio's original edge. I picked it up, turned it over. Nothing special except it was, well, mine. Now, returned to the soil it shouldn't have left. I placed it upright at the property line like a miniature monument, not to remember the conflict, but but to mark when it ended. The next HOA newsletter 3 days later was sterile shaken. Ridgeview Estates thanks residents for their patience during recent land use clarifications. We remind homeowners to respect county boundaries and seek legal approval before structural improvements. Compliance is not optional. No mention of Karen. No apology to me. But one line stood out. Interim HOA, President Joel Kinsley. I folded the page and slid it into the binder with the surveys and violation letters. I didn't need to hold on to hate, but I wasn't going to forget what it took. A week later, Joel stopped by. He stood at the garden's edge, on lot 17, hands in pockets, unsure how to begin. You know, he said slowly, I used to think boundaries were just lines. Invisible things you ignored unless they made noise. I listened, but now I realize he continued boundaries matter because they define what's ours. Not just on paper, but in how we respect each other. I nodded. Karen never understood that I said. We enabled her, he sighed. We let her act like she owned more than she did because it was easier than challenging her. I let the silence sit. Then I said it's not too late to fix things. He looked hopeful. You think so? I do, I said. But it starts with telling the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Joel extended a hand. I shook it. Not because I trusted the board again, but because I believed in rebuilding. One line at a time. By the next weekend, the footage was online. Not just the demolition, but the entire sequence. Karen's screaming the bulldozer, rolling in the Red County sticker, and Grant's calm. You were. Posted by Jake's Kid, with dramatic piano music and a caption. HOA President melts down as county bulldozes illegal patio. Over 8,000 views in 3 days. 1,000 views in Ridgeview Estates, once known for orderly hedges and silent cul-de-sacs, became a minor sensation in HOA Facebook groups statewide. Karen became a meme. Screenshots of her mid-scream captioned, "When you realize your power ends at the property line." Me, after reading zoning laws for the first time. This is my land. It's not. To outsiders, it was amusing. To us, it marked a shift. The drama wasn't whispered anymore. It was documentation. Evidence. Proof of that unchecked power had been caught in daylight. Karen didn't show her face for 2 weeks. Not at board meetings. Not at mailboxes. Not in her driveway. Tofu was seen once walked by a housekeeper who avoided eye contact. Rumor was Karen had 3 citations. 1 for unauthorized construction. 1 for defiance of a legal order. 1 for public nuisance during a government operation. Each with fines. Each both public record. Meanwhile, we adjusted to the new normal. Joel, as interim president, called a meeting to reassess governance tone. The room was packed, not in fear, in a relief. Joel asked me to speak. Not just as a homeowner, but as someone who'd exercised responsible resistance to overreach. I stood and held up the first violation notice Karen sent me about interfering with community harmony. I want to show you this, I said. It was never about a patio, or a fence, or a garden. It was about what we let slide. And what happens when someone thinks their title gives them ownership over someone else's rights. I paused. I didn't fight because I enjoy conflict. I fought because if I didn't, someone else would be next. The room was still. Then someone clapped. Then another. It wasn't thunderous, but it was enough. The next day, a flyer went up on the community board. Ridgeview Recommitment Week. Let's rebuild what matters. Trust, clarity, respect. Free legal Q&A with county land surveyors. Neighborhood BBQ on, permitted, ground. Live music and story sharing at the clubhouse. All voices welcome. Signed, John Bosson, the HOA. Yes, all of us now. Months earlier, I'd dreaded HOA notices. Now I almost looked forward to them. Karen's house went up for sale. No fanfare, no open house, just assigned by appointment only. The day the moving truck arrived, neighbors peeked through curtains. I didn't. Not because I wasn't curious, but because I no longer needed closure. She was gone. The fight was over. The soil on lot 17 was tilled, reseeded, sprouting new grass under the late summer sun. But there was one more twist. Weeks after she left, an envelope arrived, no return address, just my name and lot number in thin, angular handwriting. Inside a folded sheet of notebook paper. One sentence. Maybe now you understand how fragile power really is. No name, no signature, just that. I held it a long time. Read it again. Then folded it and slipped it into the binder, not out of fear, but because even ugly truths deserve a place in the story. Power is fragile. Yes, but so is silence. And I wasn't staying silent anymore. That fall, I spoke at a homeowners conference 2 counties over. Mark connected me with the organizers. They wanted someone to talk about homeowner rights boundary enforcement and navigating HOA abuse without losing your mind or humanity. I walked into a modest conference room with 50 strangers in folding chairs and began. I used to think lines were something we drew in the dirt and forgot. But now I know they're what keep us whole. Not because they divide us, but because they define us. I told them everything. The patio, the bulldozer, the hearing, the letter. The night I walked my property line by flashlight, wondering if I'd gone too far to defend what was mine. When I finished, a woman in the second row raised her hand. Her voice shook. My HOA president took my garage lease and said I had no right to complain because I was new. What should I do? I gave her the advice I gave myself. Write everything down. Save every letter. Record every meeting. Don't yell, don't cower. Document. And remember, truth doesn't need volume. It just needs light. That night, I opened the binder one last time. Not to add anything. To remove something. I took the first boundary dispute photo, Karen, standing with arms crossed, daring me to fight. I flipped it over. On the back, I wrote, "This was the day everything changed." Then I burned it. Let the ash scatter. Poured myself a glass of wine. Later, I walked the line. Samson trotted beside me, tongue lolling, tail swishing. No new fences. No cameras. Just me, the quiet, and the land I'd fought for, not to win a war, but to refuse to surrender my peace. The final step wasn't a court order. It wasn't a demolition or a hearing. It wasn't even Karen leaving with her scarf, sunglasses, and bruised entitlement packed into a moving van. The final step was quieter. It was me. On a cool Saturday morning in early October, hammering the last cedar plank into place. A modest fence, not tall, not flashy, but unmistakably there. It traced Lot 17 like a gentle underline beneath a hard-earned sentence. A boundary made visible, respectful, real. No one told me to build it. No HOA demand. No zoning requirement. Just a decision. This is mine. You can't cross it again. The day I finished, I invited neighbors over. Not a celebration, just coffee, folding chairs, and a fresh pie from Naomi. Ellen brought cider and a quiet smile. Mike brought his pocket knife to trim branches near the posts. Joel showed up out of breath, still in work boots. We didn't talk about Karen. Not directly, but we talked about the lawn looking better, the air feeling lighter, the new board elections, and how Ridgeview finally felt like it belonged to those who lived here, not just those who thought they ran it. Joel handed me a gift before he left, a custom metal sign, matte black with engraved silver lettering. Lot 17, protected and respected, subtle, dignified, perfect. I mounted it on the fence the next morning. Not to gloat, to mark a chapter closed. I kept the binder. Of course I did. All the records, photos, surveys, citations, labeled indexed chronological. I laminated some of Karen's worst letters. For contrast, to remind myself what arrogance looks like in print. But the binder didn't sit on my desk anymore. It sat on the living room bookshelf, between Robert's Rules of Order and Charles Frost's collected poems. I didn't look at it often. But when someone new moved in, like the couple who bought Karen's house, nervous and hopeful, I'd pull it down, hand it to them, and say, "And this isn't a book of fights. It's a manual on how to win without losing your soul." Months passed. The lawn on Lot 17 grew thick. My tomato beds thrived. The fence weathered gently under winter rain. Ridgeview changed. The new board ran things differently. Transparent. Boring, even the best kind of HOA. Monthly emails, clear minutes, and no more anonymous complaints about mailboxes or wind chimes. I was asked to join the board. I declined. I fought one war, I said. I'll leave peacekeeping to others. But I volunteered to host a workshop on property rights, zoning, and reading plat maps. It filled up faster than expected. We moved it to the clubhouse. One spring night, I got a knock at my door. A woman I'd never met, gray curl, soft voice, holding a pie and papers. She introduced herself as Margot, the new HOA secretary. "I've been reading old records," she said. "There's a lot about last year, confusion, but also respect for how you handled it." I invited her in. We talked for over an hour about how power tips from order to control, how silence is a kind of consent, and the courage to say no when everyone expects silence. Before she left, she asked, "Why didn't you just sell and leave?" I thought about it. How tempting it had been during the worst. How I'd stood in my lot one night considering listing the property to escape the noise. But I looked around at the garden, Samson curled at my feet, the porch lights glow. Because I didn't come here to win a fight, I said. I came for peace, and you don't get that by running. You get it by staying, by drawing a line, and ensuring the next person doesn't fight the same battle. She nodded slowly. I hope we don't forget that. Write it into the bylaws, I joked. She laughed. But I think she might. The last thing I did, I took the first violation letter Karen sent, accusing me of being antagonistic for questioning her fence, and framed it. Hung it in the garage above my workbench. Not to gloat, to remember. That scrap of paper wasn't just a threat. It was the beginning of a lesson. A reminder that peace without boundaries isn't peace. It's permission for abuse. And when someone comes for what's yours, not with force, but with smugness, bureaucracy, and a smile hiding a dagger, you don't have to yell. You just have to stand. Quietly. Legally. Completely. I still walk the perimeter, sometimes. Old habit. Samson at my side. Coffee in hand, cedar in the air. But now I don't look for violations. I walk it like you trace something sacred with your fingers. Not because it's in dispute, but because it's earned. Because it's mine. Because no one, not Karen, not the board, not time gets to redraw what I've reclaimed. And under that soil, the roots are deeper now. And I am too.